Okay, so I think what people enjoy and why they make so many of these World War II movies is because it's the one of the last wars in our our species history where we can have these victorious good versus evil battles without controversy. Wait a minute, I'm just repeating myself from the last video, aren't I? Yeah, Bridge to Hell. Lenzi, what are you doing? You're not giving me anything new to talk about. Damn it! How dare you? Remember when you watched Bridge to Hell and you were kind of reminded of when you might have been playing, Allies versus Axis in the forests as a kid? Maybe you were, maybe you weren't. I don't know. We weren't. I don't think we did. I think one time there was a cousin of mine. Anyway, the point is you could just pop on Call of Duty 2 or whatever instead at that time, It's around the time I grew up anyway. And so if you want to experience that, after you've watched Bridge to Hell, if you want to experience that again, well, Lenzi also has Wartime. Similar locations, similar premise. There's not much newer value here compared to the previous film, if we want to claim that the previous film had any value whatsoever in the first place. I mean, the other reason it was fun to play World War II potentially is because, the weaponry by comparison isn't as it's kind of modest and quaint by comparison to the rapid fire machine gun era. Was certainly the atomic era, which it was directly followed the Second World War, which announced its closure. And again, like you didn't have this sort of all these big armies going up against one another. Like the wars afterwards seemed to more resemble first world countries invading third world countries. Even in the case of the big conflict going on right now, I mean, it's not like you can't look at a conflict like that and just want to play that. It's just kind of disgusting and terrifying. Consider how you don't have as much romantic, war fiction regarding the First World War, because how can you do anything with trench warfare except the absolute display of human ugliness and apotheosis of that? You can't exactly do macaroni combat with the Western Front in the First World War. That's just not happening. There aren't a lot of video games set in World War One. That's just not happening. I guess no one wants to use those weapons. World War Two is like a fine kind of grace period where like the weapons are modern enough, so you can. It's kind of sick when you think about it. Kind of articulate that. Plus, certainly in the context of the United Kingdom and the United States, the Allied powers in general in the Second World War, they see that as a defensive war against two aggressive empires. The First World War can sooner be interpreted as just a group of empires who wanted to go for war for a long time, just finally finding the opportunity to do so and kind of reveling in it initially. And then the United States being involved kind of begrudgingly, and then the populace of the United States not seeing it as really worthwhile to have participated in that conflict. So you didn't have that attitude about the First World War. Not that you ought to have necessarily, on any conflict really. Potentially. But in the Second World War, there was a certain we had no choice. We had to go up against the Axis powers, and so you can push this narrative that our countries, our nations had a greater moral standing, in the years subsequent to the conflict, having done so, and rightfully so. Like ultimately, I mean, it's hard to argue otherwise. I think, although it just becomes a horrible justification for acts committed afterward. I mean, for example, I was reading one time. In India, Gandhi's considered a more controversial figure than you may realise, because since Gandhi's death, his image has been used to justify many policies which people consider totally antithetical to Gandhi's principles. It's very easy to look at actions of the United States and see their justifications for peacekeeping in the kind of for World War II justification. Oh, you don't want to be like Neville Chamberlain. It seems to not add up. They seem to be against the principles of self-defense and the begrudging conflict, which defined the ethical standing that the Allied powers had in the Second World War. Maybe we just need to stop making war films in general. We're just Oscar bait garbage now anyway. It has no merit anymore. Just Nolan or Sam Mendes long takes. It's just like this is only so impressive after a while. It's just how impressed am I supposed to be with budgets at this point? It's just like, oh, the film's got a budget. That's nice, but I just don't I don't care that much in the end. And neither of subsequent generations, I suspect, to be honest. I've spent too much time talking about this particular title. Let's move on now. Thanks for suffering through this again, my friends. Have the best possible day, night you have ever imagined.